Welcome to The Critique. We're looking at a listener video today that argues society, and specifically medical institutions, are gaslighting everyone, pretending they never pushed healthy at every size now that drugs like Ozempic are on the table.
It's a big claim. Let's get right into it.
Okay, first thing. The material undermines its own, very valid evidence by wrapping it all up in this really emotionally charged, almost conspiratorial hyperbole.
That is the headline issue here, isn't it? I mean, the creator has the receipts. They've done the work.
Totally. We're talking about citations from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, Johns Hopkins, UC Berkeley. These are not, random Reddit threads.
Exactly. These are major institutions that did explicitly discourage weight loss advice. But the problem is how it's all framed. It's not a policy failure. It's evil. It's postmodern Marxist bullshit.
A plot to kill you off.
Right. And I just have to push back on that for a second. If the creator genuinely thinks these institutions are harming people, isn't that anger justified? Why should they tone it down?
I think the anger is valid, but you have to look at the goal. Is the goal to vent, or is the goal to convince a jury? Because if this is a prosecution, you don't win by just screaming that the defendant is a freak. When they say they want to kill you off by getting you to be so fat, you're introducing a motive of, murder.
It's a massive claim.
It is, and it triggers immediate skepticism in a neutral listener, someone who might otherwise be on board with the actual evidence.
So you're trading credibility for that emotional release? You lose the people who aren't already converted?
You lose the entire middle ground. The hostility just distracts from the core point, which is the sheer institutional inconsistency.
Yeah, if I'm a neutral observer and I hear woke craziness or freak class, I stop listening to the facts and I start analyzing the speaker's own bias.
Okay, so the suggestion then is you have to decouple the factual timeline from the moral judgment.
Yes, from the intent. Let the documents do the heavy lifting.
A colder presentation of the facts is actually, it's more devastating than a hot take.
For sure. The indictment should just be, here is what they said in 2021, and here is what they are selling in 2024. Let people connect the dots.
Let's make that concrete. The script has that line. They want to kill you off. How do you rewrite that?
You focus on the outcome, not the secret motive. So instead of they want to kill you, you say something like, the policy of discouraging weight conversations directly contradicts the current medical push for GLP-1 inhibitors.
But you're pointing out a logical fallacy in the system.
Exactly. You aren't accusing anyone of murder. You're accusing them of hypocrisy or incompetence. And that is way harder to dismiss.
I also noticed that part about the Johns Hopkins headline, the 5 reasons why doctors shouldn't ask patients to lose weight. The creator calls it strike one and kind of goes off on a tangent.
It just creates so much noise. A much better approach is to simply contrast that headline directly with the new medicalized health stance.
So you could just say,
in 2023, Hopkins said asking a patient to lose weight was harmful. In 2024, they're prescribing weight loss drugs. The biology didn't change in 12 months, so why did the advice?
That's strong. It forces the listener to answer the question themselves. Okay, let's move to the next big structural issue. The argument treats all these different groups, pop culture magazines, government agencies, universities, as if they're a single coordinated, elite mind.
Yeah, we call that the monolith fallacy. The creator is conflating like Cosmo magazine with the Department of Veterans Affairs.
I did notice that. In one breath, they're talking about a plus-sized model, and in the next, they're onto federal health guidelines.
And it makes the argument incredibly fragile.
How so?
Because a skeptic can just say, well, Calvin Klein is a fashion brand trying to sell underwear. They aren't in charge of public health. So by lumping them in with the VA, you actually weaken the attack on the VA.
Right. It makes it sound like this grand unified conspiracy where some fashion editor and a hospital administrator are getting the same memo from the smug libs.
It just lacks nuance.
Okay, so how do we fix this? Because culture does influence policy, right? They're not totally separate things.
Not separate, no, but they are distinct. The suggestion is to distinguish between the cultural forces and the medical policy. The argument is actually much stronger and frankly scarier if you prove that even serious medical institutions caved to cultural pressure.
I see. So instead of they're all in on it, you're saying the culture went crazy and the doctors were too weak to stand up to it.
Precisely. That is the institutional capture argument. It's not a conspiracy, it's cowardice.
So for a concrete example, you would what?
You would explicitly categorize the receipts. Group the Calvin Klein and Lizzo examples under a heading like cultural shift. Acknowledge that pop culture chases trends. That's its job.
And then you pivot.
Then you hit them with, institutional policy. And you say, look, it's one thing for a magazine to be trendy. It is not acceptable for the Department of Veterans Affairs to adopt a cultural trend over established science.
That reframing makes the VA look even worse. It paints them as unserious.
And you can ask the question, is this a coordinated gaslight, or did these institutions just lose their nerve and are now trying to quietly overcorrect?
Okay, so this leads to the big why. Why did this flip-flop happen? The creator's theory is, well, the causal link between Ozempic and abandoning body positivity is asserted, but it's not really proven.
Right. This is the big pharma part of the piece. The claim is the shift happened because, and I'm quoting, they found a way to medicalize health. So now they can keep you on those medications for life.
And I struggle with this logic every time. It assumes pharma wasn't making money before, but obesity leads to diabetes, heart disease, joint problems. All of those require expensive, long-term treatments.
That is the gap in the logic, right? If pharma is just evil and wants money, why cure the one thing that causes all these other profitable diseases? A listener immediately thinks, wait, aren't they losing money on insulin sales if everyone gets thin on Wegovy?
So the suggestion is you have to strengthen that economic argument. Pivot from a simple sickness argument to a more sophisticated business model argument.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the business model argument that makes this click?
It's subscription versus repair.
Subscription versus repair. Okay.
Think about the old model. Someone gets obese, develops heart disease, maybe they need a bypass surgery. That's a huge one-time revenue event for a hospital. Or they take statins for cholesterol, which are dirt cheap generics now. It's messy, unpredictable revenue.
Right, sporadic.
And the new model, the GLP-1 drugs, that's a subscription service. It's $1,000 a month, every month, probably for the rest of your life. And in the eyes of Wall Street, that annual recurring revenue, or ARR, is infinitely more valuable.
That is a terrifyingly rational explanation. It's not about keeping you sick, it's about converting you into a subscriber.
It's the Netflixification of medicine. You could argue that the healthy at every size idea was useful when there was no cure, because it kept people placated.
But the second technology created a monthly subscription product for weight loss?
The ideology became an obstacle to profit.
Right.
Ideology only survives until technology makes it obsolete.
That logic holds water. And it doesn't need a smoke-filled room of conspirators to work. It's just cold market incentives.
So the fix for the script is to drop the "they want to keep you stuck" line and replace it with this whole lifetime value analysis.
Yes, frame it as a technological disruption. The industry realized the lifetime value of a Wegovy prescription just outweighs the messy treatment of side effects. It's a much more sophisticated argument.
All right, let's talk about how the evidence for all this is actually laid out. Because right now, the presentation of the receipts is scattered. It feels more like a stream of consciousness than a built legal case.
It was a friction point for me, for sure. The creator jumps from a Richard Hanania tweet to a Bridget Phatasy post to a UC Berkeley website, back to his own feelings about owning the libs, and then boom, we're at the VA website.
It's whiplash. And I feel like when you put a random tweet next to a government policy document, you aren't elevating the tweet, you're actually degrading the document.
Yes, you are diluting your best evidence. The listener gets lost in the he said, she said of Twitter beefs instead of seeing the systemic issue.
So the suggestion is to organize it hierarchically. You need to build what you could call a pyramid of denial.
Okay, walk me through the pyramid. How does that flow?
You'd start at the bottom with the cultural layer. This is where you put the Hanania and Phatasy stuff, the media noise, the magazine cover. You're just setting the scene of the culture war.
Okay, so that's the noise. What's the next layer up?
The academic layer. You bring in the UC Berkeley sociology department. This shows how the cultural idea was legitimized by intellectuals. It gave the theory credentials.
And the top of the pyramid?
The institutional layer, the VA, Johns Hopkins. This is where you show the idea migrated from the campus to the clinic. This is where real people get hurt. And if you structure it that way, you show the infection spreading upward. It tells a story.
What about that specific tweet from Hanaya, the freak class one, where he contradicts himself later? It's kind of buried in the middle of the script right now.
You save that for the very end.
Ah.
It's the smoking gun of hypocrisy. If you put it in the middle, it's just more noise. But if you put it at the end, after you've proven the systemic failure, it serves as a perfect microcosm of the whole lie. It's the mic drop.
I like that. It turns a list of links into an actual narrative arc. Okay, speaking of narrative, we have to talk about the creator's personal story.
Right. The transition between the big systemic critique and his personal weight loss anecdotes, it disrupts the flow.
It's very abrupt. I mean, we are deep in the weeds of VA policy, and suddenly he's talking about losing 25 pounds, his joint pain, and wanting to play baseball with his future kid.
It is jarring, but at the same time, it's really the only part of the piece that feels human. We don't want to cut it, right?
Oh, absolutely not. It provides the stakes. But the weakness is the placement. By weaving it into the evidence phase, it blurs the line between this is a societal lie and this is my personal fitness diary.
And it lets a critic just dismiss the whole thing as one guy projecting his gym journey onto the government.
Exactly. So the suggestion is you move it. You use it as a bookend.
Move it to the conclusion.
Use it as the why this matters segment. You present the prosecution's case, the facts, the economics, the policy failures. And then, at the end, you present the victim impact statement.
That completely changes the context. Instead of an interruption, it becomes the consequence of everything you just laid out.
Yes, you frame it as, if I had listened to that VA website instead of my own body, I wouldn't be able to run with my future son. Now the personal story isn't a tangent. It's the proof of damage.
It grounds the abstract policy in physical reality. It answers the so what question.
And it leaves the listener on an emotional high note instead of just an angry rant. It shifts the tone from, I hate these people to, I survived these people, which is way more powerful.
Okay, let's recap the main points for the rewrite. We have a really strong core here, but it just needs discipline. First, tone down the evil and kill you rhetoric. Let the documents speak for themselves.
Second, stop treating the opposition as a monolith. Distinguish between culture and medicine. It makes the attack on the medical side much harder to deflect.
Third, fix that economic argument. Abandon the simple pharma is evil conspiracy for the much cleaner business theory that pharma just wants you subscribed.
And fourth, organize those receipts into a hierarchy, culture, academy, institution, so we see the idea spread. And then finally, move that personal story to the very end to act as the emotional anchor for the whole thing.
It's about taking a piece that feels like a rant and refining it into what feels like a closing argument in a court case.
The raw materials are all there. It just needs to be built into a structure that can actually hold the weight of its own accusations.
So to the listener who submitted this, we want you to take these ideas, rewrite the script, and send it back to us. We really want to see if you can turn this from a complaint into a case.
I would love to see the version where the logic is just as loud as the anger.
That's it for this critique. Get to work.